Hello everyone, my name is Awot, and today I'm working on Dev Diaries episode 14. I've been forgetting to put this disclaimer these past few episodes, but disclaimer, I'm not a developer for Age of Mythology. I have no relation to the official Age of Mythology in any way, shape, or form. When I say I'm developing my mod for the game. Again, I have no relation to the official Age of Mythology. I'm just a goofball that's making a mod, and I'm trying to make that mod without any coding experience whatsoever, so you definitely don't want me touching your game. But with that out of the way, I'm going to go back to working on my stuff, which is today I'm going to be focusing on Awot Nomad. So the last update for my mod was the February 12th update, I believe. It was the Awot Nomad update where I unveiled my Awot Nomad map, 4 other maps, 2 of which were meant to be like precursors to the Aztec DLC, and then I fixed a bunch of bugs. And the idea of Awot Nomad was super cool and amazing to me at the time, how it had different biomes. And so I played it online a lot with friends, and I mean like a lot. So after playing it for like the 50th time, I came to the realization that Awot Nomad is just a glorified land map. Like, unlike any other land maps, it doesn't even have any physical features to give the gameplay variety, like how other land maps may have mountains or actual working water. Since currently the water on Awot Nomad is shallow water, it's purely just for visual. And yeah, I started thinking about it, and I realized that there's a lot of water on the map, and it kind of sucks that on this map with so much shallow water on it, the water doesn't do anything. And then on top of that, I felt like the map could have used some sort of geographical feature to vary up gameplay. So my first idea was an idea I actually had when I first started making Awot Nomad, and that would be for some islands to spawn as cliff islands instead of normal islands. So they would be taller and their edges would be cliffs, so you couldn't go onto them. You need to go to the entrance, and it would just randomly generate 2 or 3 entrances. And if you were the defending player, you would have a great time defending it. You may have noticed that on the live version, the center island already does this sometimes, where it sometimes generates as a cliff island. And that goes to show I did consider this feature, but the execution of it my first time around was terrible. For the first time I did it, every island had like a 1 in 10 chance of being a cliff island, right? But then that resulted in some islands looking pretty terrible. For example, if a small island randomly rolled this chance, then nearly the entirety of the island would just be nothing but cliff, and there would hardly be any actual land on the island itself. And then on top of that, there was just some generations where even setting it at 10%, there was just still too many cliff islands going on. So eventually I just gave up on this idea and published Awot Nomad the way it currently is alive, where you see it has no cliffs besides the center island sometimes. But recently I've been working on Awot Nomad again, and I think I have a solution for these problems. So first, the size problem. I made it so that if it rolls the chance for it to be a cliff type island, it will override its current size and replace it with a much larger number. So now whenever you guys find a cliff island, you'll notice that the cliff islands are much larger than normal islands. But even after I implemented that change, there would be some cases where there wasn't enough space left for that giant island to form, and so it would then still be squished into a small island, and you would have run into the same issue again. So I made a different code that keeps track of how many islands have generated, and it does a calculation based on the amount of players that are on the map and the current map size, so standard, large, or giant. It returns a number, and then for every island generated before that number, it will have a chance to be a cliff, and any island after that will not be able to be a cliff because it might run out of space. And then to offset the fact that there's going to be less rolls overall for cliffs now, I made it so that the percentage of islands that roll this before this number is up will be more inclined than not to be cliffs. Well, not that much inclined, just more than 10% at least. Since I do have to try to not put too many cliff islands, or else the game will get too choky. There are actually more nuances and formulas I implemented in this system to keep the number of cliff islands in check without making them too rare, but I'd rather not explain them because some of them are a little convoluted, but ultimately it all equals out to there should be a just right amount of cliffs most of the time. I will say that I did make it at first so that islands with cliffs will stay away from other islands with cliffs, but this ultimately resulted in every island except for the first cliff island being in corners, which kinda sucked. But if I turn it off completely, there was the possibility for all the cliffs to unfairly spawn in one area, making a super awesome, tight, choky base that you can defend easily, while the rest of the lobby has to scrounge for their very open land. So I made it that only 50% of the time will cliff islands avoid each other. This makes it less likely that they'll all be in the corners, and also less likely that all of them will generate next to each other at the same time. Good balance. But of course, both of those worst case scenarios are still possible since it's a chance. But having the worst case scenarios happen sometimes instead of very frequently is a win in my books. And then on top of that, the next change I made is very controversial, but I've tested it with like up to 5 people online now, and they've all appreciated the change so far. And that is I'm changing the water on Awot Nomad from shallow water to hybrid water. And then on top of that, I'm putting fish in the water. So what does this mean? If you want to play Awot Nomad exactly the same way you have been playing it, which is making a giant land army and having to walk across the map, you can still do that. In fact, I'd say most of the late game is just that anyway. But in the early game now, having ships defend your base or attack the enemy will now be a viable option alongside fishing to make your economy boost faster. Yeah, I know Awot Nomad is already very generous with the amount of resources it gives you, so I'm sure adding fish won't harm any balance in that regard, since at that point it's just like throwing a cup of water in the ocean. But yeah, you'll be able to build ships in this new hybrid water. and this will add a much more fun and dynamic gameplay in the early game, I feel like. On top of that, the fishing resources also gives the water a use, instead of just being a visual waste of space, because truly, I was thinking about the other day, and the amount of shallow water that just does nothing for the game in Awot Nomad was a lot. So now to have that water serve a lot more purpose, it's going to make the map's large size much more meaningful. Also make you appreciate the land more. On top of this new hybrid water system, this actually allows me to use any water type I want, so you will notice that I have reshuffled what kind of watercolors you can get on Awot Nomad. I am much less limited now that I don't have to use only shallow water. And yes, I did remove marsh water since a lot of people kept asking me to remove the marsh water even though I like the color green. Wait, no, I actually didn't completely. I added a secret backdoor chance to the map. So you guys will have the relatively normal looking watercolors that the map will choose from, but I programmed a 2.5% chance in the map that it will override the water type of a much more ugly water type. So the 3 ugly water types that might appear include the yellow river, since a lot of people tell me that this reminds them of a certain liquid, the spectral water, and then the marsh water that everyone hated. But yeah, this only happens 2.5% of the time, so you won't be seeing it happen too often. Otherwise, the water pool has been expanded significantly to include new normal looking watercolors. Yeah, you can have anywhere from really dark water to stormy gray water to light blue water. But yeah, my original reason for not having deeper water in the first place was because I want to offer a sort of land nomad alternative to those people who didn't have the DLC. They would be able to download mine and use that as a land version of Nomad, since a lot of people are not very good or want to play water combat that normal Nomad provides. And as we know, the land Nomad is locked behind the Heavenly Spear DLC. So I want to provide a land map alternative, but with me making Awot Unknown and Awot Select into Nomad maps now. Don't worry, you'll still be able to play the original. The Nomad is a separate option, but with those having Nomad variants now, those kind of fill that role that I wanted, which was to provide a land alternative to those who did not own the DLC. So now that I've solved that issue with another map, I can do what I want Awot Nomad now and make the water deeper. And yeah, last episode I showed you guys, I updated the picture, I updated it again. You can see that the Nomad versions of maps now have a little dove to differentiate them from the normal versions. So here's Awot Select Normal and then Awot Select Nomad, which has the dove in the middle to let you know that you're selecting the Nomad version. If you're wondering why I decided to use a dove to represent Nomad, this dove being the same one that appears in Ceasefire at the beginning of each Nomad match. And where did I find this image? I found this in the Ally tab. So you go up here and check your relations with other players in the map. But yeah, that's where I got the dove from in case anyone else wants to use that for anything, since a lot of people don't even know that these icons are here. I didn't put the dove on Awot Nomad or Awot Fools because, you know, it's implied that those are already Nomad with their name, and they don't have a normal variant, so they're only Nomad. So I felt like those didn't need a dove to signify which version of the map you're playing, because there's only one version of those maps. However, I did add the dove to the map set option, which you can see we have the fancy Awot Nomad map set now replacing the Awot's unusual map set. And like I said in the last video, the Awot Fools maps, which will include Peach Blossom Maze, Bovine Lands, and Mount Toa, will have a lower chance to be selected if you choose this playlist, compared to the other 3 Nomad options. But that's it for things that already exist, but that's not the end of the road for Awot Nomad. I'm still giving it some more love. It hasn't been done yet though, so there's one thing that I know is coming, and that is I'm planning to add the rainforest biome that we saw in the Aztec previews. I want to add that rainforest biome as one of the possible biomes that spawn, similar to how marsh, underworld, and desert can spawn. I want rainforest to be one that spawns, and then I'll also be adding a dirt biome for a total of 10 biomes that the island can spawn as. But of course, we would have to wait for the Aztec assets to come out first before I can add that. And then if I'm feeling extra generous, I might add some Aztec assets to pre-existing biomes if there's a place I can shove them in. For example, the desert might have a small chance to be the Aztec desert if there's enough assets for that. And I'll definitely try to include new Aztec animals in Awot Nomad. And then this next feature might not make it to Awot Nomad. It's an experimental feature that I haven't even started yet. It's just a conceptual idea right now. But that would be to have normal cliffs. Either cliffs or passings will generate randomly on islands, just to add more gameplay variety. Although I would still have to implement this and then playtest this myself. But depending on how I feel about them, I might not have them since we already have the cliff islands now to act as obstructions in the battlefield. But we'll see if I want to add that. Plus, adding it sounds like a pain because I'm going to have to make a different cliff type for each biome. And then this is already starting to sound like a headache to work on. But if you're one of my friends, I'll be asking you to join me to test these things out as usual. And we'll see how this goes as we play this and test this while we wait for more Aztec news. I'm recording this on Friday, April 10th, and at the time of recording there's still currently no Aztec trailer, so hopefully this keeps us preoccupied until we do get a trailer. But these are the additional changes I'm making to Awot Nomad in the near future. I might have a separate video showing the extra cliffs / passings that generate within an island, and the 2 new biomes once the Aztec DLC comes out in a different video. But that's it for this development diary. The next video will be about me making a new map that someone requested. They gave me a loose idea and it's up to me to interpret it, but thank you for watching and have a great day as usual.